Okay, so a couple things for today. Make sure I refreshed and resynced all of the grades that were in Canvas to your Skyward account. So the first part of class, since I'm zooming it, we'll actually kind of bump that to the back of class. But at some point during class, go through there, check your Skyward grades, and make sure that if there's any irregularities, any kind of funkiness or whatever else, let's say that you did a chapter 16 section 1 quiz, but it hasn't been updated yet in there. Okay, you need to email me directly with the specific of what the issue is. Like say, coach, my chapter 15 grade is not averaged because I had a third attempt on it. Okay, whatever else it is, but you email me, so then that way I can look specifically at that grade, because I'll have 110 other kids that are in there that are, a lot of them are normal. Some of them have little funky pieces here and there, but definitely check your grades. Anything that shows up as a missing, instead of having it inputted in as a 0, it automatically fills it in with a 50. Okay, now some of those, if you made a 40 on it, I popped it in as a 50 instead of a 40, because that's the lowest it's going to go, is a 50 there. But if you got a 50 and you're kind of looking around at it, check and make sure you did it, you've looked at it, you've completed it. And then if you haven't, email me and say, Coach, I updated this one. Chapter 15-1 quiz is finished. All right. So at the tail end of class, go ahead and make sure and you go through your grades. And if there's anything that's funky about the Canvas sync over to grade your regular Skyward account, make sure you let me know. Skyward's the one you look off of for me, because that's what your progress report's going to get ran on Wednesday, and that's what your overall 6-week grade is going to get ran on at the end of the week. Okay, a couple things for today. Tomorrow you have a major grade, chapter 16 test. Remember, there is a review that is posted underneath modules. It's chapter 16 test review. There's 10 questions that are on there. Here in a second, I'm going to give you the option of exactly what to do with the remainder of your time, whether you use your time to focus on chapter 17-1, or if you use your time to go off of the 10 questions that have to do with chapter 16. So the test is tomorrow. We won't pick back up on 17-1 with a quiz until Wednesday. So you'll have time tomorrow after you finish your test to work on chapter 17-1, but I need to give you an introduction to 17-1, okay? So 17-1, if you will, go ahead and open up your MyHRW to page 471 to page 471. That'll have to do with the European Renaissance and Reformation. So chapter 17, section 1, page 471, European Renaissance and Reformation. Bless you. So what this compares everything to is kind of, you're coming out of the Dark Ages, coming out of the Middle Ages, a time that was kind of war-torn, a time that was disease, and people are kind of just thankful, honestly, to be alive during this time. So they kind of refocus their efforts, and it's kind of like a wipe of the brow, sigh of relief that they're alive, and they refocus their energy into certain things. All right, so Renaissance man. Have any of you ever heard of the term Renaissance man? Okay. What about something more common and jack of all trades? Heard of that one? Okay, so in your eyes, what do you see or what do you know kind of like a jack of all trades to be? Yeah, they can do anything. So it's not just a specialized idea. They are good at multiple things. If something breaks down at your house, whether it's a car, whether it's a kitchen sink, whether it's resetting the internet, whether it's teaching the kids how to do homework, whatever it is, they know how to do a little bit of everything. All right, so a jack of all trades. Kind of use it as an example of school. If there is one person that specifically is in the band and they're really good at it, okay? But then if there's another person that is in football, that's in basketball, that's in track, that's in band, that's in UIL, that makes straight A's, that's in the student council, that's involved in every single thing that's there. That would kind of be your idea of a Renaissance person or a jack of all trades. They're able to do many things with what's in top of the old head there in the brain, as compared to just being really good and specialized at one thing. Okay. During this time, whether you're an inventor, whether you're a painter, whether you're a poet, whether you're a screenwriter, whether you were someone who is a good governmental leader, a law writer, whatever else, you kind of get the same names popping up over and over and over because those people, were very influential. Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Edison, people like that are kind of someone in U.S. history that we could kind of consider to be, a Renaissance man, a jack of all trades that goes in on there. So the question it asks here, it says the Renaissance, imagine your community had been decimated by war and disease. After much hardship, the disease has passed and the war is over. How would you then feel, and what would you spend your time and energy doing? So we can compare all of this, if you don't have any prior knowledge, to the Renaissance. I mean, honestly, you can compare everything to what's going on right now with COVID. Now, it's completely different because this, for the most part, the majority of the world has been a huge inconvenience. To others, it has been a dramatic effect because someone in their family, someone that they knew, lost their life. So the different perspectives of that is a lot different. If you think of the Renaissance and you think of the times prior to, the Black Death, all the plagues, the war, there was a lot of loss of human life during that time before the Renaissance. So as we hopefully continue on the slide to come out of COVID and eventually, get rid of masks, get back to normalcy, all that other good stuff, what are some of the things that you would think would be top priority for the nation? And we're kind of comparing this to the idea of a Renaissance once they came out of the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages and stuff. What are some of the key points you want to make sure that need to get recovered, that need to get back to where they were? Okay, so employment is a big deal, which employment specifically ties to what? What is employment tied to in like a broad scope? Exactly. The economy. Economics is going to be a big deal. Making sure that the economy is rebounded. Okay. You see a lot of, and I guess they're talking about the third round of a stimulus package right now. Okay. Trying to put money back into the hands of people from the country, from the world, wherever else. So then that way, whether you're paying for rent, whether you're paying for food, whatever, to make up for that lost gap. Now, in Texas, we're a lot different, honestly, than places that had a full lockdown, like California, like New York, like those other ones, to where there were still people here in Texas that honestly didn't miss a paycheck. There was people in Texas that missed a few paychecks. There was also other people that were affected very similar to California, to New York, to some of those other ones, that were completely out of work for a while. So rebounding your economy would be a big, big deal. Trying to get everything back on footing that was there. What else? What else would you need to have a good restart of things? We've got economy and employment, the idea of economics. What else would you want to make sure? Would you like someone who might have had experience bringing something back as compared to someone who just has no experience whatsoever? So you'd like a firm leadership, whether it's an overall government, when you're kind of in uncharted territory. So it's kind of hard to have someone who has dealt with a pandemic since we haven't ever had this before. But you would look to leadership would be a big deal. So leadership and economy are two of the kind of biggest things that are there. So same way in the Renaissance. Okay. So they bump out of war. They bump out of disease. They want to make sure that they establish a strong leadership, a higher social class within the idea of patrons that we'll talk about, and then overall rebuilding everything that's there. Does anybody know what the word Renaissance means? What does Renaissance mean? Exactly. Very good. Rebirth. What does it mean to have a rebirth? You're not, yeah, you start new. Okay, so it's brand new, start over. All right, you're going to change, kind of like having a makeover. Okay, you're going to change your overall what you are now to what you want to be in the end, and you are rebirthing yourself. You're starting anew, and they're going to create civilization to the point of where instead of killing, fighting, war ravaged, disease ravaged, they're going to focus on the idea of health. They're going to focus on the idea of education. They're going to focus on the idea of arts and literature. They're going to try to go polar opposite of what they were. You see this sometimes when people try to make over themselves. They don't want to be anything like they once were. They want to go from one end of the spectrum all the way to the other. And that's kind of how the Renaissance turns out, going from, war-torn and disease-torn to the idea of a more educated, refined civilization. All right. It says, how would the people that survived, would they have a new outlook on life? So think of this. Are there things that you took for granted in your freshman year coming into school that you took for granted whenever you got into be a sophomore in life in general? Maybe your parents the same way, of things before COVID and things during COVID right now. Is there anything you took for granted? Breathing. What's that? Breathing. Normalcy, right? As far as just being able to walk around, without a mask on, having a normal airflow, not having any restrictions or the extra added, just like your clothes. I mean, honestly, some people feel naked without a hat on. Now you have to have this as another accessory that's all the way through there. Okay, so the overall part of breathing. Okay, that's one. What else? Okay, time with family members. All right, something you take for granted as far as being, whether it's your family members or your friends, gathering in a large group versus pre-COVID, whenever, if you wanted to have a birthday party with someone, you didn't have to sit there and count the number of people or how long you've been or if they have to be spaced out and all this other stuff. Now, some people definitely look at it differently than others, but based upon regulations, I see this every Sunday whenever I'm sitting at church and we're driving in and you get a view of the hospital that's right there beside it. You take for granted the idea of whether the person is sick that's inside of the glass or whether the person is having a child that's inside of the glass. And I see like a family of 6 or 8 people outside of a window every single time that I come in on Sundays, because those people, whether their person is inside ill or whether the person is inside having a child, they can't go in because you can only have a certain number of people they're there. Something as simple as watching a little kid's basketball game. Spard has a deal this year. If any of you have little brothers or sisters that play in it, only 2 people in the household can go into the game. Yeah, that's it. So you kind of get funky, like the Heatlas right here. Okay, if you got multiple brothers and a mom and a dad, the whole family can't go in. It's kind of a regulation. You take for granted something as simple as walking into a gym and watching, a game that's on there. So there's kind of a difference of the change of that. That would be something that, simplistic part of life that would be in there. Some of you may have changed because of, your parents' work, your overall life of what you did and what you received and how you lived may have drastically changed based upon the economic impact of your parents. So you tie all this part that we know as COVID. Thankfully, it's not anything like the Black Death or like the Middle Ages, like going into the Renaissance. But there has an opportunity, once we're done with COVID, to be somewhat of a small Renaissance, of a change to get back, to greater things that are there. All right. It says Europe suffered from war and plague in the Middle Ages, which was followed by the Renaissance, meaning rebirth. The positive idea of a rebirth was something that allowed the Europeans to grow, to become a powerful nation, to have the idea of exploration, of growth, and making themselves, like I said, one of the most powerful nations in there, as compared to continuing on the same trend of the Middle Ages, of the Dark Ages that went through. It changed them culturally. The Renaissance changed culture forever. It also changed our culture because it gave us the ideas of arts, of literature, of inspiration, as compared to just farming, battling, trying to stay alive as a society. That there was greater things that were out there to focus your extra time on, your efforts on. And again, it definitely impacts us today. All right. So as you're going through chapter 17, section 1, and again, I know this is going to be backwards on the Zoom, but there'll be key points that we're going to go over. And I'll share my screen right here with the whiteboard that's frozen. So give me just a second on there. I'm not going to pull it up. Okay, I'll just talk about it then. Up on the board right here, it shows you your boxes of the Renaissance. So these 4 boxes have to do with the actual Renaissance itself. The first part is going to be a definition of the Renaissance. So from periods of 1300 to 1600, when Europe had a rebirth in art and learning. Okay, characteristic. What was it like? What was the idea of the Renaissance? Drew inspiration from Greece and Rome. So they looked back to previous successful societies and took the idea about what should we make ours like? What should we reform it to? What should we rebirth it as? The Greeks and the Romans were a big inspiration. Then it gives examples like wealthy merchants became art patrons, the idea of humanism. A non-example is going to be something that carried on from previous times or now times and continues to go on. It's not something that was just specific to the Renaissance, like the idea of art and literature in the Middle Ages. We still have art and literature today. It wasn't something that was just brought on during the Renaissance, but it was a heavy emphasis that's on there. As you go through these boxes, here are your 6 key points that are there. Number 1, the time of the Renaissance. That's covered in your definition. It's already done, so you don't have to add anything to it. All right? A non-example, the 3 that you would add to it was what is secular, what is perspective, and what is vernacular. All right? So you would add those to the non-example column that is in the boxes of the Renaissance. And then examples, which would fall underneath there, they're already kind of there. You may add just a little bit more to them, like the origin of humanism. So in this box, it just says humanism. Add a little bit more information about what start of humanism is, what was used with humanism, why humanism was important. And then the last part was the importance of wealth during the Renaissance. Patrons had to be in the wealthy class. Okay, they were the ones that were buying, kind of like we talked about the tulip story. The rich people were impressed with tulips. They said the value of a tulip is only what the tulip is worth. So because they thought the tulip was really, really expensive and a valued product, they overpaid 20 times the value of it or more and made millionaires out of it in the, in the story of the tulip in the history of mankind. So these patrons pushed the idea of art, pushed the idea of overspending for this. The wealthy class was important during the Renaissance because that's kind of where the money flowed out to other people that had talents within arts and whatnot. Okay, so your 2 choices at the end of today. Number 1, you can either go back to chapter 16, test review, make sure you complete those 10 questions. So then that way you have a study guide for tonight for your major test that'll be tomorrow over chapter 16. Or if you've already got that completed, you can move on to chapter 17, section 1, finish out your boxes for the Freyer model that's on there for the Renaissance. Okay, make sure you check your grades. If there's any issues you have with any grade, make sure you email me directly and specifically say, chapter 15, section 2, this is what the problem is. Okay, anybody have any questions? Make sure you add to your notes, handwritten, so then that way on Friday, when I come around and check them, you have the opportunity to make a 100 that is on there. If for some reason you didn't have them last Friday and you need me to check them now, raise your hand. I'll come around. I'll look at those and we'll be all good. All right. That's it for today.